In the NBA, there is no such thing as being set up for the next decade. Young teams with promising cores usually either disappoint as a group or achieve too much success too fast and then get broken up because they can't afford to keep all of the players contributing to that success, and then on top of those two reasons, there are a million other things that can go wrong in that time frame as well. Relationships can sour, players can request trades, injuries happen, underwhelming development can occur, and in the end, the message is clear that windows for contention need to be taken seriously because you never know what will happen next. The Boston Celtics are a perfect example of this, having been one of the most successful NBA teams of the last 8 years or so, consistently finding themselves in the mix at the top of the East with a ton of different roster makeups until they finally got the puzzle right last season, winning a championship with everything coming together. The Celtics had everyone under contract moving forward, their core was mostly all in its prime, and they didn't seem to have a single glaring weakness to hold them back from winning more. And yet, 1 year later, the Celtics season ended early in disappointment, and now it's looking like their window has officially been shut. That brings us to today's video, where we will be diving into everything regarding the current state of the Boston Celtics, including what got them to this point, what their options are moving forward, and whether or not they'll actually be able to salvage their dominance. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. 1 minute you're on top of the world revolutionizing how the game is played, the next minute you've got more questions being thrown at you than you have answers available. The 2024 NBA champion Boston Celtics were star-studded, deep, versatile, and dangerous from the three-point line. No exaggeration, every single player in their rotation was at least an above-average three-point shooter, so their spacing was elite, they were taking way more three-point attempts than anybody else, while also making the second most threes percentage-wise in the NBA, so they had the potential to bury you fast if you didn't keep up, and most importantly, they didn't lose anyone of note after that run either, all while simultaneously being a top-ranked defense. The Celtics gave hefty contract extensions to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, making them the two highest-paid players in the entire league. Derek White also got a nice hefty extension worth just shy of a max contract. Jrue Holiday was already on a max contract until 2028, Kristaps Porzingis was locked in for 2 more years, and Peyton Pritchard had just signed a very team-friendly 4-year extension the year before, so there really wasn't any reason to expect much of a fall-off anytime soon for them. This season may not have been filled with as much dominance as last year brought in the regular season, as they finished in second place in the East behind the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was reasonably attributed to maybe a bit of championship hangover, where they didn't feel the need to go all out now that they had already proven themselves. They were still playing a similar playstyle as last year, taking way more threes than anybody else in the league, while still ranking in the top 5 of the NBA both offensively and defensively. But there was one sign of a potential let-up out there that got overlooked in hindsight, being that the Celtics went from being the second best three-point shooting team percentage-wise last year to being the 10th best three-point shooting team this season, which is still good, but not nearly as dominant as they were a season ago. The Celtics' entire scheme relies on generating a ton of three-point attempts and burying opposition by making them at a ridiculously efficient clip. They've taken the Golden State Warriors playbook from their dynasty days and tripled down on it, shooting about 17 more threes per game than the Warriors ever did in those prime years. The phrase "live by the three, die by the three" gets thrown around a lot, but it couldn't possibly apply to any team in history more than it applies to the Boston Celtics this year, and unfortunately, after living large by it last year, this year they saw themselves die from it. Everything pointed to their series against the Knicks being yet another comfortable win for Boston, as they swept their regular season series against New York, but Game 1 of this series was a rude awakening for what was about to come, as the Celtics blew a 20-point lead while missing the most three-point attempts in a single playoff game in NBA history, missing a ridiculous 45 threes, shooting 15 of 60 from deep. I know in today's NBA, three-point shooting has become essential, and so many players are now capable shooters, but we can't just pretend threes are an easy shot to knock down at a high volume, and without a balanced approach to scoring the basketball, you're tempting fate by relying on consistent efficiency on one of the most difficult shots there is. You also need your best player playing good basketball to make a deep run in the playoffs, and unfortunately, Jason Tatum was shooting tour dates in the first 3 games of this series, shooting 32% from the field in those games, where the Celtics went down 2-1, and then, when he finally erupted for a monster scoring night in Game 4, the worst possible thing happened. He tore his Achilles, not only ending his season, but the severity of the injury very much puts his entire next season at risk too. Without him, the Celtics tried their hardest to fight back, but eventually lost the series in 6 games, and then afterward it came out that Jaylen Brown was also playing through a slightly torn meniscus, meaning he's going to have to think about having a surgery this offseason that could set him back as well. All of this, of course, brings us to the main topic of today's video, being that just 1 year removed from all of the glory of a championship, the Celtics now look like a sinking ship without any clear-cut answers regarding how to keep themselves afloat. The Celtics will have the largest payroll in the entire NBA next season, are well above the second tax apron, their best player that takes up a large percentage of that payroll will miss most of, if not the entire season, and their second best player may have to get surgery that could hold him out of most of the offseason and could leak into the start of next season. Al Horford is hitting free agency this summer too, and while I wouldn't be surprised if he re-signs on a team-friendly deal, it's also very possible that he cashes out one last time elsewhere before he retires. Kristaps Porzingis has been dealing with an illness for months now, and we somehow still don't know the specifics about it, so his future could be up in the air. Jrue Holiday is about to turn 35 years old and is nowhere close to the player that he once was, and a team led by Derek White and Peyton Pritchard just doesn't strike the same kind of fear into opposing teams. Their avenues for improvement are also pretty minimal and borderline non-existent without moving some of their key pieces, but none of the players they would view as expendable would really be that coveted by other teams to the point where the Celtics could get a worthwhile return that would improve their chances. Kristaps Porzingis could barely breathe after playing a few minutes in a row in the playoffs, so with his current health status, nobody is really going to want to give up much for him. Jrue Holiday's contract running through 2028 at his age will be mostly viewed as a negative asset, and Peyton Pritchard's emergence this season makes him the kind of player that the Celtics would never even think about wanting to trade anyway. They're really stuck with what they have unless they opt to trade either Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, but that's probably the last thing that the Celtics would ever consider. Boston's payroll is sitting above the second tax apron for the next 3 years, which includes the season where Kristaps Porzingis' contract runs out, so free agency signings are pretty much off the table for the foreseeable future. Their lineup for the next year will probably be Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis if his illness ever gets cured, with Sam Hauser and Baylor Shireman coming off the bench. Can that team make the playoffs? In the Eastern Conference, yeah, probably. Is that team competing for championships, though? No chance in hell. Will a post-Achilles tear Jason Tatum be able to help them get back to glory? Possibly, but banking on that is a tough bet with how Achilles tears have affected the careers of prior players that ruptured them. Last resort could be opting to go through a mini tank because luckily they do still own all of their first round picks besides in the 2029 draft, so finding young, cost-effective contributors through the draft is possible, but with them typically selecting near the end of the first round every year because of how much they usually win, the odds of that are lesser than that of the teams picking in the lottery. They'll remain competitive, but as the title of this video states, we may have just watched the end of their championship window with it slamming shut. It's not the end of the world because they got to watch this core group win it all last season, and there are a lot of teams that go all in for a championship just for it to never amount to anything, so they can hang their hat on that. But even though it's not a fun thing to admit, that level of success may not be possible anymore without drastic change. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the Celtics right now and their future moving forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.